Hello students, we're going to be designing today a sort of jewelry box or little keepsake box similar to what's shown on the screen. By looking at this, hopefully you can see we will be using the finger joint that we have just recently been learning as the main joint for the corners. The box will have a lid, and if I sort of simulate a pivot point here, oops, we'll do that again. So the idea is the lid would be able to open up. We'll be able to put some hinges on there potentially. Inside the box, we will have a base. So if I just remove that for a moment, you can see there is a base in the bottom. And we'll also be looking at doing some sort of feature on the main side of the box. And again, you can sort of see underneath there is the base. There's a bit more flexibility for this, which we'll talk about in a moment. But let's start by looking at the main task. So if I jump into a new SketchUp now, as always, I'm going to triple check that everything's set correctly. So I am using millimeters and a 0.0 as my precision. And I'll also just get rid of the little person to begin with. Now to do this task, we're going to draw up the box to begin with. So I'm going to start by drawing a side piece. It's going to be like one of the longer front pieces. In the particular case of what I'm drawing in this video, the material that I'm using is going to be 19mm thick wood, and it's going to have a maximum height or width, if you like, of 140mm. So I'm going to go with that to begin with. So this particular one, I'm going to go 120mm long by 19mm wide. And if I zoom in, this is basically giving me the length of my piece and the width. So I've decided to make it 120mm long, 19mm thick because of the thickness of the material. And as I said, in this particular example, my material can be 140mm wide in total. So that represents the piece of material that I could have for this box. Okay. From there, I'm going to now mark in my my finger joints. So I'm going to begin by using my tape measure, for the construction lines. I'm going to start by coming 19mm in from each edge. Now remember, it's 19 because that is the thickness of the material that I'm using. Okay, if I was using a different thickness material, it would match this measurement. I'm then looking at this height that I've gone here, 140, and I want to divide this into 4 equal pieces as much as humanly possible. So I've chosen 140 for 2 reasons. One, because in the example I'm doing, that's the widest the wood can be, but also it divides nicely by 4. So 140 divided by 4 is 35. So what I'm going to do is from the bottom, do some construction lines that are 35mm from each other for a total of 4 of them. So you can now start to see where the finger joints are coming in. Because because construction lines can't be used for actually editing, I'm now going to take my pencil and draw those parts that I need in. So I'll just do the vertical piece and the horizontals. Now I'm just going to do the parts that I need. I'm not going to go all the way across. I could. And there's nothing wrong with that. It just might mean more pieces to rub out later on, but I'm just literally putting in the divisions. So now I have all my pieces drawn up. I can rub out the construction lines because they're not needed anymore, and I'm going to use my push-pull tool to get rid of the fingers that I don't need. Now I tend to start with the finger staying at the bottom, so I'm going to leave that one there, and I'm going to push that one out, which then means the top one gets pushed out. And I want exactly the same on the other side. We should always try and have the same piece with the same joints. So there we go, we have a side. Last bit of fix up here is to just clear out these extra bits of lines that I didn't need, because I don't want to look like I'm going to cut those later. And that is a piece. Now I'm going to turn that into a component. So I'm going to say make component, I'll call that side. And I already know that there's going to be a second side that's exactly the same, so I'm just going to make a copy of that straight away and paste it in and just stick it over here somewhere ready to go later on. It's the matching opposite side. Now let's talk about this piece here. So again, I'm going to start with drawing up the basic shape of my wood. So I'm going to start here, go across. I'm going to go again 19 millimeters thick because I know that's the most I can do. For this side, I'm going to go 100 millimeters. There you go. And I'm again going to pull that one up to be 140 to match the piece that I've been doing. If I just look at this piece now, I'm going to do exactly the same process. I'm going to draw in first the 19 millimeters from the side. So 1 and 2. I'm again going to divide that into 4 pieces at 35 millimeters each, because 140 divided by 4 gives me 35. And again, I'm going to mark in the joints. Now this I'm going to do a little bit different. I'm going to use the rectangle tool to simply grab and draw in the parts that I know I'm going to get rid of. So from the point corner to the point corner there. I'm doing these second ones. Whoops, did that one wrong, sorry. Try and get that in the right spot. So linking from that corner to there, that's better. And again, I want them to be opposite. So I'm keeping this finger here. So obviously this one must disappear. That's why I drew it in there. So I'm going to push that out. And again on the other side, 1 and 2. Again, I'm going to rub out the construction lines that I don't need. And I'm also going to turn this into a component. Now, I'm rotating it around so that I can grab everything here in a big selection without accidentally selecting this. And I'm going to call this the component. I'm going to call this the end. Okay. And I know I need 2 of those, so I'm just going to copy and paste and stick another one over here somewhere. Right, so now I've got all 4 pieces. We're going to join them together. And as we've seen many times before, we can lock pieces together. So if I start with this piece here, I'm going to lock this bottom corner to where it's going to join right here. So using my movement tool, make sure I grab it from that corner and I lock it to that corner there. Let's take the other piece. So select it first. Same thing, I'm going to lock this corner to this corner here. So think about that, lock, and rotate one more time around. Select what is currently the back, and I will lock this corner to this corner here. So grabbing it by the corner and locking it to the corner there. And I have a tall, thin box this time. Rightio, we're almost there. Let's talk about the base. Now, the base is going to be made out of 3mm thick plywood. So because everything's components at the moment, I'm just going to simply draw a rectangle that goes from one side to the other. Remember, it's not modifying these pieces, it is drawn its own rectangle. And I'm then going to grab the push-pull tool, pull it down, and tell it to be 3mm. So there we have a base. Now I want the base to be its own component, so what I'll do is quickly hide away all these sides, just right-clicking and hiding, so that I can now choose just the base, right-click and make a component out of that called base. And of course, I can bring everything back by choosing my display option and say unhide all. So now I have a base that's also a component on my piece. And for the lid, I can do the same thing. So the lid, I'm again going to also draw a rectangle right across from corner to corner. But this time I'm going to pull it up by 19mm as well to use the thicker wood for the lid. And just like before, I will quickly hide all of this so that I can grab just the lid part, right click, make component, and I'll call that the lid. And bring everything back, and I now have a full box. I didn't do the curving, so if I jump back to my original, you'll notice this curving here. This is for some bonus points, if you like, at the moment. If you're going to do that, of course, then you can't put the base on. So if I took that base out for a second, I would have to think about where do I draw some sort of shape. So if I was going to do a curve, for example, I wouldn't be able to just go from maybe edge to edge, because what will happen when I cut into that, essentially, I'll be cutting into this part of the base here. It's not going to look very, very good at all. In fact, if I do it just to demonstrate, make sure I'm editing first, draw in that same curve that we're about to do, going up there, for example. If I push that in, well, you can see that's our problem here. We are seeing part of the side piece. So I'd probably have to move it in and start it somewhere else. I'm also going to have to think about putting in some sort of little steps or whatever to sit the base on instead. And again, if I look at my original diagram, you'll actually see that's what I've done. Here is the original side piece, and here is a little step that I've added in just to sit the base on. And in fact, if I hide this base, you can see it, and maybe this side here, you can see it even more clearly. Little extra pieces that were glued in essentially, or nailed in potentially, and the base is sitting on top of them. All right, so I've skimmed through really quickly how to physically create this box design. You'll need to come up with your own measurements, and this will be something that will have been explained to you in the task. So this video was about the basic concept of drawing up a box that uses the finger joints as its corner joint, but the actual measurements of the box that you're using, therefore the measurements for these thicknesses and so forth, will hugely depend on exactly how you've been asked to go about doing this task. This video again is a little bit generalistic. So hopefully that's helped you. Again, the idea of SketchUp here is you've got the opportunity to make mistakes and do things the wrong size, to come back and fix them so that you know what you're actually going to do when the time comes to make it in real life, and therefore what materials you need, how much of it you need, and so forth, which again is going to be part of the project that you're actually doing. So thank you for watching this. Hopefully you'll be able to put together your version of this box.